In the last 133 days, 22 things happened in this world that you need to see in one place. Each one of them, on its own, looks like a single news story. But laid side by side in order, they form a pattern that the Bible described long before any of them happened. So tonight, I'm going to show you the chain. And then I will show you what is scheduled for the next 2 days. January 6, 2026. Catholic Moms and Holy Cross Family Ministries publish an article titled Sabbath Rest, My New Year's Resolution. It promotes Sunday rest as a national spiritual resolution. January 7th, Pope Leo XIV at his weekly audience makes ecumenism, interreligious dialogue, and fraternity the central mission of the Roman Catholic Church. January 8th, the Heritage Foundation in Washington publishes a policy document titled Saving America by Saving the Family. On page 38, the report asks the Congress of the United States to protect Sunday as a day of rest, reflection, and family time. January 9th, Pope Leo XIV addresses the ambassadors of 184 countries that maintain diplomatic relations with the Vatican. He speaks about visible and structural unity of the world under the moral and spiritual leadership of Rome. January 12th, on the Greg Gutfeld Show on Fox News, the guest Terry Schappert says on live national television, "I would like to make the United States a Catholic monarchy." The same day, the President of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, Archbishop Paul Coakley, meets President Donald Trump privately at the White House. The meeting is closed to the press. January 14th, the North Carolina State Board of Elections blocks Sunday voting in Columbus County on religious grounds. February 16th, the Montenegrin Parliament reinstates Sunday by law as the National Day of Rest. Both the political left and the political right find common ground in the decision. Shortly after, the President of Montenegro, Jakov Milatovic, proposes a constitutional amendment to make Sunday rest permanent. February 17th, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops releases its 2026 annual report on religious liberty. February 27th, the Presbyterian scholar Stephen Wolfe, author of The Case for Christian Nationalism, announces a new study co-authored with 2 Presbyterian pastors and encourages it to be shared with clergy. March 17th, the Religious Liberty Commission established by President Trump holds a hearing in Boston. Witnesses argue that the federal government should pay the legal costs of religious liberty plaintiffs who win in court, a massive transfer of leverage towards state-backed religious claimants. March 24th, Pope Leo XIV gives the Jubilee of Hope its continuing theme, and the theme is reconciled humanity. The same vocabulary that will shape the encyclical he is preparing to sign. April 7th, the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio meets Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican to ease tensions between President Trump and the Pope. 2 days later, April 9th, Marco Rubio delivers a speech at the Catholic University of America. He declares that the political order of the United States was built to secure the common good and is rooted in the philosophy of Augustine and Aquinas. He calls the United States one of the proudest and most enduring testaments to the eternal truth of our faith. April 13th, the final hearing of the Religious Liberty Commission is held at the Museum of the Bible in Washington. The chairman of the commission, Dan Patrick, declares to the public that there is no such thing as separation of church and state in the Constitution. May 4th, President Donald Trump signs the first Jewish American Heritage Month proclamation in the history of the United States that calls on all Americans, not only Jewish Americans, to observe a national Sabbath. The dates are sundown May 15th to nightfall May 16th. This observance is named Shabbat 250. May 6th, Pope Leo XIV opens his Wednesday catechesis with a reading from the Second Vatican Council document, Lumen Gentium, paragraph 48. He says, "The Church is the universal sacrament of salvation." May 8th, Pope Leo XIV completes the first year of his pontificate, walking through Pompeii before 20,000 faithful, placing his ministry, he says, under the protection of the Virgin Mary. May 10th, at the Regina Caeli prayer in St. Peter's Square, the same Pope opens his address with the words, "Happy Sunday." And he reads from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 15. The words are, "If ye love me, keep my commandments." The same Sunday, May 10th, on the other side of the world, the Fiji Sun newspaper publishes a citizen's submission to Fiji's Constitutional Review Commission. The submission, by a man named Samani Koroi Bukadkuna, asks Fiji to restore Sunday restrictions by law. He says we are slowly losing our identity as a Christian nation. May 11th, Bishop Robert Barron, who sits on President Trump's Religious Liberty Commission, records a video invitation to the National Mall event in Washington. He says the purpose is to celebrate how religion and America have really come together in a beautiful way. May 13th, the anniversary of the Fatima apparitions, Pope Leo XIV kneels in silence at the spot in St. Peter's Square where John Paul II was shot in 1981 and dedicates his audience to Mary as model member and mother of the Church. I just gave you 22 events, spread across 4 continents, across 133 days. Each one is documented, each one has a source, each one is verifiable. And this is not what is about to happen. This is what has already happened. And now I want to show you what is scheduled for the next 2 days. An encyclical is the highest teaching document a sitting pope can write below a constitution. A first encyclical is the programmatic act of an entire pontificate. It sets the tone of everything that follows. Pope Leo XIV has been working on his first encyclical since the summer of 2025. The reported title is Magnifica Humanitas, in Latin, Magnificent Humanity. The German Catholic news agency, the agency known as KNA, has reported that the signing is set for May 15, 2026. That report was carried by Aletheia, by the National Catholic Register, by Catholic Herald in the United Kingdom, by Info Vaticana in Spain, by Zeal, and by the Notre Dame Church Life Journal. The Vatican press office has not yet issued the official confirmation, so the date is widely reported but not yet certified. What is certified is the anniversary. Because May 15, 2026 marks 135 years since Pope Leo XIII signed an encyclical called Rerum Novarum on May 15, 1891. That document is the foundation of modern Catholic social teaching. And the popes who came after Leo XIII have made a tradition of signing their own social encyclicals on or near the same date. Listen to the chain. May 15, 1891, Pope Leo XIII signs Rerum Novarum. May 15, 1931, Pope Pius XI signs Quadragesimo Anno. May 15, 1961, Pope John XXIII signs Mater et Magistra. May 1, 1991, Pope John Paul II signs Centesimus Annus. This is not Adventist commentary. This is Catholic tradition, written openly in the Vatican's own archives and reported by every major Catholic outlet. 135 years of social encyclicals, on or named after one date. And today, on the 135th anniversary, Leo XIV is expected to sign his first. The Pope who is signing this encyclical is not any Pope. His birth name is Robert Francis Prevost. He was born in Chicago, Illinois on September 14, 1955. He is an Augustinian by religious order. He is the first American in the entire history of the Catholic Church to sit on the throne. He was elected on May 8, 2025, and on May 10, 2025. In his first address to the College of Cardinals, he explained the name he had chosen. His words were these: "In our own day, the Church offers to everyone the treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution, and to developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor." Mark those 3 words: dignity, justice, labor. That is the exact triad of Rerum Novarum, paragraph 11. The name he chose is not decoration. The name he chose is doctrine. He told the world from his first hour what he intended to write, and the date he is writing it on was set 135 years before he was born.
If the Lord has blessed you through these videos, please prayerfully consider joining our Patreon. You can support this work there, and there is also a completely free tier, no cost, no commitment. Just one click with your email or a Google or Facebook account. Patreon also works as a newsletter. YouTube can be fragile, and should anything ever happen to this channel, Patreon is where I'll be able to reach you and let you know where to find us next. The link is in the description below, or you can simply scan the QR code on your screen. Thank you for being here. Now back to the story.
Now I want to read to you exactly, in the words of Pope Leo XIII himself, what the original document of 1891 actually says. These are not interpretations. These are direct words from the Vatican's own published text. Paragraph 11 of Rerum Novarum reads, "Civil laws, laws which, so long as they are just, derive from the law of nature their binding force. The authority of the divine law adds its sanction." Read that twice. Civil law receives its authority from divine law. That is the foundation of the entire encyclical. Paragraph 41 of Rerum Novarum reads, "From this follows the obligation of the cessation from work and labor on Sundays and certain holy days. The rest from labor is not to be understood as mere giving way to idleness, but it should be rest from labor, hallowed by religion. Rest, combined with religious observances, disposes man to forget for a while the business of his everyday life, to turn his thoughts to things heavenly, and to the worship which he so strictly owes to the eternal Godhead. It is this, above all, which is the reason and motive of Sunday rest." Paragraph 51 of Rerum Novarum reads, "Civil society exists for the common good." Hold that phrase. The common good. You are going to hear it again, spoken by an American Secretary of State on April 9, 2026. Paragraph 57 of Rerum Novarum reads, "Let the working man be urged and led to the worship of God, to the earnest practice of religion, and, among other things, to the keeping holy of Sundays." Mark the verbs: cessation, urged, led. This is not an invitation. This is a doctrine that asks the state to enforce Sunday rest, because civil law receives its authority from divine law. Written in 1891, reaffirmed by Pius XI in 1931, reaffirmed by John XXIII in 1961, reaffirmed by John Paul II in 1991, codified by John Paul II in 1998 in the Apostolic Letter Dies Domini, which named Leo XIII directly and stated that Sunday rest is a worker's right, which the state must guarantee. Extended by Pope Francis in 2015 and in Laudato Si, paragraph 237, where Sunday rest was tied to creation, to the poor, and to the care of the earth. 135 years, 5 encyclicals, 1 growing doctrine. Now, what does the new encyclical of 2026 say? The document is not yet public, so I am going to tell you exactly what is confirmed by the Vatican, exactly what we can reasonably expect based on the pattern, and exactly what we do not yet know. Confirmed. The encyclical addresses artificial intelligence. Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, the prefect of the Vatican Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, confirmed this publicly in November of 2025. Also confirmed, the encyclical will continue Rerum Novarum as its operating framework. The Pope himself said so in his first address to the College of Cardinals on May 10, 2025. He used the exact triad: human dignity, justice, and labor. The same triad Leo XIII used in paragraph 11 of the 1891 document. The reported title carried by the German Catholic news agency KNAA, Magnifica Humanitas, Magnificent Humanity, is itself a reach back to 19th century Catholic vocabulary. The continuity is not hidden. It is announced. Now I want to speculate carefully because this is the part that matters most for what we are watching. Pope Leo XIV in that same first address called artificial intelligence another industrial revolution. That phrase is not random. Leo XIII wrote Rerum Novarum in 1891 specifically as a response to the original industrial revolution, when factories were swallowing the worker's day, the worker's body, and the worker's family. So when Leo XIV says AI is another industrial revolution, he is telling the world exactly what kind of document he is preparing to write. Rerum Novarum, for the age of the algorithm. And here is where this becomes the heart of the whole story. Think about what AI is doing to the human weak. Machines that never sleep, algorithms that schedule the human being into a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week labor cycle. Gig platforms that have erased any boundary between work and rest. Warehouses where software times every bathroom break. Drivers and couriers whose income depends on never logging off. A whole generation of workers who no longer have a day. The Catholic answer to industrial pressure on the worker, written for 135 years, has been one specific phrase: a weekly day of rest, protected by the state, hallowed by religion. If Magnifica Humanitas applies the framework of Rerum Novarum to the AI age, the logical next step by Catholic precedent is a renewed call for that weekly day of rest. Now, I want to be honest with you. We do not yet know whether the new document will use the word Sunday explicitly. Every social encyclical in this anniversary chain has touched Sunday rest in some form. But the new document could state it in a dedicated paragraph, or it could carry the same idea quietly inside the words, rest and dignity of labor. Either way, in a matter of hours, we will see. I am not going to invent what the document says. I am going to read it when it is signed. What I can tell you tonight, with confidence, is that the framework is set, the pattern is set, and the day Catholic doctrine has named on this exact anniversary for 135 years is the same day Bishop Barron is inviting America to gather on, in front of the Capitol, 2 days from now. Now I want to place two documents side by side. On the left, Rerum Novarum, signed by Pope Leo XIII on May 15, 1891. On the right, a speech given by United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the Catholic University of America in Washington on April 9, 2026. The speech was delivered 2 days after Rubio met Pope Leo XIV in the Vatican. Watch the words. Pope Leo XIII, paragraph 51 of Rerum Novarum, 1891. Civil society exists for the common good. Marco Rubio, Catholic University of America. The structure of our political order itself, built not to sanction license, but to restrain passion, check ambition with ambition, and secure the common good. The phrase is identical. The framework is identical. The vocabulary is the operating vocabulary of a Vatican encyclical from 1891, spoken now by the chief diplomat of the United States in 2026. There is more. Marco Rubio also said this on the same day. The system the founders gave us belongs to the same civilizational tradition that produced the towering cathedrals of Rome and the philosophy of Augustine and Aquinas. He called the United States one of the proudest and most enduring testaments to the eternal truth of our faith. The Secretary of State of the United States is declaring publicly that America belongs to Rome's civilizational tradition. 135 years after Leo XIII wrote that civil law receives its sanction from divine law. The line from 1891 to 2026 is no longer a guess, it is a sentence finishing itself out loud. Now, two more comparisons. Bishop Robert Barron, who sits on President Trump's Religious Liberty Commission, recorded a video on May 11, 2026, inviting Americans to the National Mall in Washington. His exact words, to celebrate how religion and America have really come together in a beautiful way. Compare that to paragraph 41 of Rerum Novarum, 1891, to rest, combined with religious observances, disposes man to forget for a while the business of his everyday life, to turn his thoughts to things heavenly. The vocabulary of religion and civil life coming together is not American founding language. It is Roman doctrinal language, and it is being spoken by a Catholic bishop on a federal Religious Liberty Commission, 3 days before a Vatican encyclical anniversary. The third comparison is from the South Pacific. On Sunday, May 10, 2026, the Fiji Sun newspaper published a submission to Fiji's Constitutional Review Commission. The man who submitted it, Samanikaroi Bukitu Kuna, said this: "When businesses remain open and sports continue on Sundays, people no longer treat the day as holy. Formalizing Sunday restrictions would help restore respect, discipline, and spiritual values." Now compare that to paragraph 57 of Rerum Novarum, 1891. Let the working man be urged and led to the worship of God, to the earnest practice of religion, and among other things, to the keeping holy of Sundays. A submission to a Pacific Island parliament uses the same operating logic as a Roman encyclical from 1891. Not America alone, not Europe alone. Fiji. The pattern is not regional, the pattern is global. Now return for a moment to January 8th, 2026. The Heritage Foundation, the most influential conservative policy institute in the United States, published a document titled Saving America by Saving the Family. The lead authors are Roger Severino, who served as head of the Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services during the first Trump administration, and the philosopher Jay Richards. On page 38, the document calls on Congress and on state legislatures to re-establish a shared day of rest for American workers and to protect Sunday as a day of rest, reflection, and family time. The document defends this proposal by citing the 1961 Supreme Court case McGowan versus Maryland, the ruling that allowed Sunday closing laws because they were said to be secular labor regulation, not religious establishment. But on the very same page, the Heritage Report names the religious purpose openly. It defends Sunday rest as protection against spiritual homelessness and as encouragement for religious observance. The trap is built into the proposal itself. The very religious justification of the law is the legal argument against the law surviving constitutional review. The case Heritage cites would strike down the law Heritage is asking for. The document does not realize it is named the problem it cannot solve. Now I want to take you to a document much older than Rerum Novarum, a document older than every government that has ever discussed Sunday, a document older than Rome. Genesis chapter 2 verses 1 through 3 reads, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day, and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made." 3 actions: rested, blessed, sanctified. Before sin entered the world, before Sinai, before there was an Israel or a Jew, or a Gentile, or a Roman, or an American, before there was a Congress or a Vatican or a national mall, God set apart the seventh day for every human being he had created. The Sabbath did not begin with Moses. The Sabbath did not begin at Sinai. The Sabbath began in Eden with the very last act of creation. It is older than every government, and it is older than every encyclical written in the city of Rome. When God himself writes the 10 Commandments on tablets of stone at Mount Sinai, he does not anchor the 4th commandment in Israel. He anchors it in creation. Exodus chapter 20 verses 8 through 11 reads, "Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor, and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." The reason God gives is not the deliverance from Egypt. The reason God gives is the 6 days of creation. The 4th commandment carries God's own signature, written into the very week the world was made. Hear the phrase carefully: heaven, earth, sea, and all that in them is. Hold that phrase in your mind. You are going to hear it again, written down by the Apostle John on the island of Patmos, near the end of the New Testament. The vocabulary of the 4th commandment is the vocabulary of the last call of God to every nation on earth. Centuries before the Roman Empire rose, before any encyclical had ever been written, the prophet Daniel saw a vision in the night. He saw 4 beasts rising from a great sea, each representing a kingdom of this world. And out of the 4th beast came a little horn, a power that would speak great words against the Most High. Daniel chapter 7 verse 25 reads, And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times, and the dividing of time. One phrase is the seal of identification. Think to change times and laws. Only one power in the entire history of the world has openly claimed authority to alter the law of God in the matter of the day of worship. That claim is not something Adventists invented. That claim is written in Catholic catechisms going back to the Council of Trent. Daniel saw it nearly 2,500 years before it happened. And today, on the 135th anniversary of Rerum Novarum, you and I will watch one more chapter of that same story being written, in real time, by the first American to ever sit on the throne of Peter. In the days of Jesus, the Sabbath had been buried under a mountain of human rules. The Pharisees had made it a burden. So when Jesus walked through a grain field on a Sabbath, and his disciples plucked ears of corn to eat, the religious leaders complained. And Jesus answered them with a sentence that has echoed across 2,000 years. Mark chapter 2, verses 27 and 28 reads, "The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath." Hear that. Lord also of the Sabbath. Not Lord of a Sabbath chosen by a state, not Lord of whichever day a government decides to enforce. Lord of the Sabbath, the one that began in Eden, the one carved on stone at Sinai, the one Jesus himself kept every single week of his earthly life. Christ did not abolish the Sabbath. Christ clarified who owns it, and the answer is not the Vatican. The answer is the Son of Man. Near the end of the New Testament, on the island of Patmos, the Apostle John hears an angel speaking to every human being alive. Revelation chapter 14, verses 6 and 7 reads, "And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. And worship him that made heaven, and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters." Hear those words again. Heaven and earth and the sea. That is the exact phrase God carved in stone on Sinai. The exact phrase Genesis chapter 2 used at the close of creation week. When the last call of God goes out to every nation on earth, it is spoken in the vocabulary of the fourth commandment. The God who is to be worshipped is the God who made, and the seal of the one who made is the day he rested. Revelation chapter 14 is not new doctrine. Revelation chapter 14 is the fourth commandment, lifted into the sky by an angel and spoken to every nation, at the very hour when an image to a beast is about to be enforced across the earth. Some have asked whether the Sabbath ended with the cross. The book of Hebrews answers them directly, after the resurrection of Jesus, addressed to Christians. Hebrews chapter 4, verses 9 and 10 reads, "There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works as God did from his." The Greek word for rest in verse 9 is sabbatismos. It does not mean rest in a general sense. It means a continuing observance of the seventh-day Sabbath, modeled on God's own rest from creation. The inspired writer of Hebrews tells believers, after Calvary, that the sabbatismos remains. Still. Now return to what the Secretary of State of the United States said on April 9th, 2026. Marco Rubio told the Catholic University of America that the American founding belongs to the tradition of Augustine and Aquinas, that America is one of the proudest and most enduring testaments to the eternal truth of our faith. The honest history says something very different. In 1565, Spanish Catholic forces destroyed the French Protestant settlement at Fort Caroline in what is now Jacksonville, Florida. They massacred the French Huguenots at what became known as the Matanzas Massacre. The National Park Service of the United States keeps the official record. The men who wrote the First Amendment to the United States Constitution were not strangers to that history. They wrote, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion," because they had read what state-enforced religion had done to Europe for 1,000 years. The First Amendment is not the heir of Rerum Novarum. The First Amendment is the refusal of Rerum Novarum. The America being described today on the floor of the Catholic University of America is not the America the founders bled to build. It is the old world the founders fled. This is where the warning becomes a promise, because I do not want you to leave this video frightened. I want you to leave this video free. Worship cannot be commanded. The moment any government orders a man or a woman to bend the conscience, the worship is no longer worship. It becomes performance. Christ himself never compelled anyone. He stood on a hillside and said, "Whosoever will, let him come." The Father in heaven seeks not slaves of fear, but children of love. The Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 15 says, "If ye love me, keep my commandments." That is the exact verse Pope Leo XIV read at the Regina Caeli on Sunday, May 10, 2026. He spoke those words on a Sunday platform. And the question that verse asks is not whether to keep commandments. The question is whose commandments? And on what day? The Bible answers that question. The day God blessed, the day God sanctified, the day Jesus kept, the day named in stone, written by the finger of God, with creation itself as the reason. So I want to invite you this weekend. Tonight, read Genesis chapter 2 for yourself. Tomorrow, read Exodus chapter 20. On Sunday morning at the exact hour the National Mall in Washington begins its sunrise service, read Revelation chapter 14. Read the words yourself. Compare them yourself. I do not need you to take my word. I need you to take God's word. And if on Friday Pope Leo XIV signs the new Encyclical, listen to what it says. If the word Sunday appears, the pattern is fully visible. If it does not appear, the pattern is still there, because the doctrine of 135 years is not in one word. It is in the framework. Either way, you now have eyes to see. The seventh-day Sabbath is older than every government. It is older than every encyclical. It is older than every national mall. It was the first thing God blessed in the Bible. And on the very last page of the Bible, an angel flying through heaven calls every nation to worship the Creator, using the very words God himself carved on Mount Sinai. The pattern is whole. The invitation stands. May God bless you, my friends, and remember, the truth shall make you free. If you'd like to explore this topic further, I invite you to watch this playlist.
There is a place I want to take you, or really, your little ones. A workshop where every Bible story comes to life, told by gentle hands, just for them. This is Barnaby. Every evening he listens to the Maker tell a story from Scripture. Creation, Noah, Bethlehem, the cross, told the way a grandfather would tell them. If you have children at home, take them here. Barnaby and the Maker, on YouTube, free, safe, beautiful. The link is below, or scan the QR code here.